as it is, I'm, as they say, pissing against the wind while I'm talking today. So what am I going to talk about? I was asked by Sam here to talk about the migrant issue. Because something is the main item in the news, doesn't make it the most important thing in the news. Doesn't make it the most important thing in society.
What do you think of the ruling for the High Court?
It is becoming, however, I think the most important thing, I think Tommy is right on this, is his attempt to claim to be the defender of free speech in Britain. Him and his allies, there's a new party, I think it's called Advance, isn't it? It's called Advance. Anybody get that? Advance? And the party is... Huh?
Who's the leader of this party?
He was a guy who used to be one of the leaders of Reform. And he left Reform and he set up a new party. He's a multi-millionaire property dealer. And he's Pakistani British. And
who are we talking about?
He set up the party called Advance, I believe it's called. Advance, that's it. Advance UK, very good. Very good. Not just a pretty football supporter. Top score.
Yeah.
It's like Bamba Gascoigne. So this guy decided that he would be the side. So you got Nigel Farage is the main story, and then you got a secondary story, which is Tommy, and the new party that he's allowed to be a candidate for. So this party, funnily enough, I was wondering about this morning. You might have your own thoughts. Mine is preliminary, but it strikes me a bit odd that you'd have Reform suddenly having a large base of support, and then Tommy comes along with a new party backed by Elon Musk, the multi-millions, and Tommy, and a major property developer with Pakistani origin, and Tommy, of course, also backed by Israel, is pushed to the fore as a defender of free speech in the world. I mean, you can't make it up. I got hold of Tommy's magnificent book called Manifesto. I bought it, so I'm a financier now of Tommy Robinson. And I started reading it. It's written by a guy called Peter McLaughlin. Anybody else read this? No. Peter McLaughlin and Tommy. And I didn't know that Tommy could write. Well, I didn't know he could write well. But this is a very well written book. Not only is it a very well written book, but it's hypnotic. Anybody ever read The Easy Way to Give Up Smoking? Or The Easy Way to Give Up Alcohol? No, you haven't. Nor have you.
But anyway, the easiest way to control alcohol. That's
They're hypnotic books. They tell you, they start off with some message and it keeps repeating itself again and again.
You haven't read it.
I have read it.
The Easy Way to Stop Smoking?
Yes.
It's not hypnotic
Am I smoking?
I read it, that's how I stopped smoking, but it wasn't hypnotic at all.
Yeah, but that's why you got these weird eyes like Shere Khan, right? Because you don't notice when the hypnotism's being used on you. Tommy's book, Peter McLaughlin and Tommy, is full of left-wing. I was surprised, I opened it up, it's all full of left-wing citations. One left-wing citation after another. Starts with George Orwell, goes on to, I think, Trotsky, goes on to a whole an army, a plethora of left-wing citations. All these people who prove about how the oligarchy controls society. So it's a classical methodology used actually by the fascists, which is to adopt the ideas of the left wing and present them as the ideas of the right wing. Now, in this particular case of the flags and the migrants and the rest of it, you see, initially you say to yourself, and I stood up here and I said, you know, I do understand why people are upset about hotels being filled with migrants who've come on a boat from France and landed here and been given a hotel to stay in and a couple of quid to live in. Of course I understand why people are upset about that. How can anybody not? I think even the people in the hotels getting those benefits themselves are surprised by that.
Because
Right?
at night at Canary Wharf.
Sorry?
Canary Wharf, £350 a night. It costs to stay there.
Well,
It's not steady hotel, is it?
that's true. That's true. So there is a legitimate issue about putting them in hotels. However,
And in rural
the idea,
communities.
well, I did see something about that this morning, but I looked on the internet about a week ago. There was a report of where each council that's taken refugees and put them in hotels, and there are very, very few rural ones. I thought there were,
Well, if you include
but
Ireland
there
as
are
well.
very, very few
Include Ireland as
rural
well.
hotels. I'm not including Ireland.
Right. Well, if you look at Ireland,
In Britain,
Well,
very few rural
Ireland's not in
hotels,
Britain.
very few rural councils have taken any of these migrants. And I know this whole story was the same story and is the same story in many other European countries
Yes,
as well.
exactly.
In
That's what
Germany,
shows it's a
back
policy.
in 2015, when the so-called Syrian migration crisis emerged, people started coming on boats from Libya to Italy, and then on boats across the Aegean, and then they walked or took whatever transportation they could to come to Germany, because Germany at that time said, we have an open door policy.
Yes.
The reason they did that was because they know there's a demographic crisis for capitalism. In other words, the capitalists need workers who are going to do the work to be exploited, to extract surplus from them, which they will use to pay, a section of that they will use to pay for the old people to get treatment when they're over 65, 70 years of age. And the German population has a demographic crisis. In other words, they do not reproduce themselves.
They're not breeding.
They're not breeding. The Brits don't breed, the Germans don't breed, the Italians don't breed. In fact, all the Western European countries do not breed.
Why not having sex then? They're not having sex.
Because there are two sides to it. One side to it is,
Sex, drugs,
as
rock and roll.
as capitalist economies develop, they and advance, you reach a certain standard of living where there is an attitude that people will wait a little bit, they have their career to look after, they think about making money rather than raising families and having a life. And the capitalist,
maybe it's
capitalist
eugenesis and
society-
depopulations have been in control of all the policies in the West for a long time.
Well,
Maybe that's
when
more
you-
got to the point of it now.
well, you argue that, and I'm not
Yes.
saying, I'm not saying there aren't eugenicists and there aren't people who want population control, but the population of the world is growing. And the population of the world is growing despite the fact that the countries where they're most easily able to annihilate populations, that is relatively backward countries economically, do not suffer this annihilation. In fact, the countries that have got the largest increases in population tend to be those countries that are the poorest countries in the world, because the traditional relationship economically was that if you have a large number of children, that they will act as, if you like, your pension. They'll make sure you're okay when you're an old person. But in the Western world, the attitude towards the family was governed by a disintegration caused by the rise of capitalist relations within society. And that included, by the way, the whole so-called sexual revolution in the 1960s, which led to a declining population
It was part
as
of it.
as the so-called family values disintegrated, and people thought they're going to
Just
stay
part of
younger
it.
for longer, and their relationships to each other are going to be governed by money, are going to be governed by hedonism and pleasure,
This is received
rather than
wisdom.
Sorry?
This is received
What's received
wisdom.
wisdom?
What you're spouting here is the decline.
I'm pointing out it's a fact.
No, it's an interpretation. These things are all part. It's come to light now that these things were all part of an attack on the Western population.
why are they an attack?
Right, because these are people who are eugenicists, who are depopulationists. From Margaret Sanger, the founder of the
I disagree with
founder
you.
of the
I
right,
disagree
but you
with
don't know about
The
these
basis
things.
of the social system we live under is the extraction of a surplus from the unpaid labour power of the workers. That's the basis of the entire society we live under. A capitalist society, that's why I specified capitalism. A capitalist society functions on the basis of making a profit out of the unpaid labour power of workers. You employ someone for 8 hours or 10 hours. For 4 of those hours, you pay for their wages, and the rest of the time, they're producing a surplus. That surplus goes into the hands of landlords, bankers and capitalists. They run the show in society. And it's for their profits
That's
that
what
the
gives jobs to
Sorry?
the people.
Well, that's what they say.
Capitalism
That's what they
is-
say.
Well, it
Exactly
is
as
the
you
best
say there.
countries.
That is supposedly
The
the
best
entire
countries are
logic
capitalist.
of the social system.
The best countries are
I'm not
capitalist.
arguing about best or not. I'm arguing about what happens.
The
Now
people
you
are
can
better.
value judge
The people
how
are
you
better.
like. I'm describing what happens. And therefore, eugenicists, although they exist and have a significant influence in certain circles, their ideas have no relevance in comparison to the driving force that this man believes is the dominant, or should be, the dominant force in society. Because the extraction of profit requires living human beings who can exploit. It may not require dead weight. So it may not require pensioners. It may not require people who can't produce wealth. But it certainly does require those who produce the surplus in society. That's the nature of the capitalist system. And so while there are tendencies that emerge, as you're saying, they will be counteracted by the other tendencies, and there certainly are plenty of them,
That's what
like
Marx-
Elon Musk, for example.
Marx started.
Although Elon Musk
and
is
his
in the
eugenicists.
circle of people who might be amenable to these ideas,
Yes.
he's one of the people turning around and saying, "Go forth and multiply."
Well, he's
He
multiplying that himself.
is saying
10
that.
kids, I
He is
think.
also saying that. Go forth and multiply.
Yes.
He wants the Western societies because he turns this into not a eugenicist, but a race issue. He says, because I don't know why, maybe because he comes from a South African apartheid type background, he says that the foundation for the issue in the world, that's why he supports Tommy Robinson and co, that's why Jordan Peterson and the Zionists are all behind him, is because he's saying the issue is which people are expanding. Instead of the Western population expanding, it is the Muslim or the third world so-called, Africans, Indians, Indonesians, South Americans. They are the ones with populations that are expanding, although less so in South America, whereas in the Western world they're not. And therefore they argue that there is a cultural contradiction between Western society and India and the Muslim world, and that will come to a head and undermine the internal stability of the Western world. That's the argument they're putting. It's not strictly a eugenicist argument. It's an argument for repopulation of the Western world. That's
Yeah,
what
so
they're
that he can
arguing.
put a brain link into your.
Sorry?
So he can operate, get a robot to put a brain link into your fucking head.
Yes, he would
That's
like
what-
to
that's
do
what
things
to do
like
that.
that.
That's-
Because Elon Musk wants to do something, doesn't mean he can do something. Elon Musk, don't forget, a few months ago, was at the center of the most powerful political project in the entire world. He was at the center. He was put at the center. Within a few weeks, he was removed. Within a few weeks, he was out.
Why?
Partly because he's got a very
For
bad
show.
ketamine problem, and therefore he's unreliable when he's out of his head on ketamine.
What's ketamine?
Ketamine is a dissociative drug. If you take it, you start being incapable. You get delusions, you get
It's
hallucinogenic.
a drug.
It's a drug. There are plenty of drugs around.
I would like to drink it, so I have 40 billions of dollars.
I don't think he's got the money because of that.
No.
I don't think,
No.
and it's not even one of the most expensive drugs.
I wouldn't mind getting that money.
Well, I'll give you the number of someone who supplies it.
Ketamine comes
Easy.
after the rich.
He's had a lot of it. Look at him.
He's only 24.
Now,
I tell you,
now,
don't drive.
I think.
This gives a lot
I'm
of
drug
people
free.
jobs in the whole
Axe
world.
drugs, axe drugs, axe
Wait,
drugs.
That's the important thing about it.
let's get to this crux of this question as to what you were talking about in defence of capitalism, right? So
Yeah.
I'm not an advocate of capitalism. I wasn't going to take you up on that, but as you insist, I will.
Come on.
So
Come on.
the argument that Elon Musk creates this, that the employer per se creates this, ignores the fact that around Elon Musk there are thousands and thousands of people who work under him and do work programming, designing,
They earn
organizing. So when
money.
this man,
They send
when,
their
fraudster.
boys to school.
What's that?
They earn money. They send the boys to school. They can buy the house, kids, and lots of money to different people.
Well, I'm not denying that. The point is,
Well,
who
it's important.
if you seriously think that Elon Musk is sitting down there, as they like to make out, he's in command of SpaceX, of X, of all these things.
They're
It's
all
not him.
frauds. They're all frauds.
Look at the time when he was in office.
Government funded.
When he
That
was
is
in office.
absolutely-
When he was in office under Donald Trump.
Public sector
Do
funding.
you seriously think he's sitting down, shooting off from the meeting with Donald Trump with a load of ketamine up his nose, then sits down and makes a plan for SpaceX, then sits down and works out what to do on X, and does all the tweets, and does all the rest of it? You seriously think he's commanding what goes on?
I've sent him a tweet,
Other
not a
people
reply.
are employed by him to run those operations. Those operations would not function without those other people.
course.
So the
As ever in
idea that he is in command
You
of this.
didn't really reply to me when I emailed.
What was your-
I texted him.
Yeah, he's got his number, he sent him a text.
There is hope one day he might reply to you.
Oh, I've already had.
He may well reply
Oh,
to you
dear.
one day. The point being that capital and the capitalists are based, the artisan coffee shop, speaker's corner, just over there.
No, that's not
The boss
artisan,
doesn't.
that's owned by
It
the-
says artisan.
It says that. It's bullshit. It's owned by the whole.
rubbish.
It's not. It's
Oh yeah, but
all
someone
great.
thought it up.
yeah, someone thought
He
it
thought up
yeah.
the label artisan. In fact,
part of a chain.
it's almost certain that
Yeah, it's right down there.
the person who thought up the marketing for the Speaker's Corner Cafe was not the owner of the cafe. Probably the owner of the cafe paid someone to make the marketing
Paid
design
AI.
and to put artisan coffee on top.
AI.
And then he
That was
pays a couple of young girls to sit in there and serve tea and coffee all day. The manager sits there making the orders. So in other words, you could remove the owner of the Speaker's Corner Cafe and the cafe could carry on functioning perfectly well without them.
But that's certainly
That's
the
the point
case.
I'm
They're all part of the same group. So their owner is completely related.
What are we talking about?
Yes, but there's a fundamental question
part
I'm
of a
talking about.
corporation as well.
The
So
gentleman
it's
here
not
was
the owner
implying,
of the
the
cafe.
gentleman here was
Chandy.
implying that Elon Musk is the creator, designer, and administrator of everything in these
No, he's
entities,
not.
which
He's a
he's
puppet
in
figurehead.
charge.
He just
of.
said he did a great job.
He
Evil
may well be the
corporation.
director, but it doesn't mean that he actually, in any real sense, has any command over the actual processes internally, apart from
has-
some
he has
some
employees.
simple decisions.
He has employees to work for him.
What's that? Well, he's clearly not got such a good brain because it's quite severely affected by ketamine. It's quite clear. Now, in fact, it's the opposite of what you say. The opposite of what you say is true. The reason why SpaceX, the reason why Starlink, and the reason why
Beautiful car.
Tesla, the
Tesla.
reason why these things function is because it isn't one brain. Because precisely the point is, you could kill Elon Musk tonight, or he could drop down from a heart attack, or suffer an aneurysm from too much ketamine, and still the company would carry on. Sorry? Well, this is the point. Who is giving the orders? It isn't Elon Musk giving the detailed orders. He might give some orders, some might be good, some might be bad. I'm not saying he's an idiot, but I'm saying he is not the genius they make him out to be,
Absolutely.
whereby
Yeah,
his
absolutely.
command decides SpaceX, Starlink, all the rest of it.
Most
the
of his
very
claims
fact,
are
the very
fraudulent and
fact
lies.
that
He
such
didn't do the
vast
programming
entities
for PayPal. He didn't found
SpaceX,
Tesla.
as
It's a lie.
Palantir,
They're all
as
fools.
Google,
They are
the very
super
as
bad.
Apple, the very fact that these entities are so vast, so all-encompassing
Bezos
in
is
their
a-
activities, illustrates to you, if you've got a brain to see and you understand about hard work, even at a level of computers, AI, intellect and so on, if you understand how those things actually work, you'll know that the tasks that are fulfilled by those companies, vast series of tasks, are made up of multitudes of millions of people working to do those things.
Yeah.
And you can take off
Yeah,
the whole
that's-
lot of the leadership. You could remove Steve Jobs, you could remove Richard Branson, you could remove Elon Musk, you could remove
They're all fools.
the Bill Gates,
Bezos,
you
they
could
are
remove
fools.
the whole lot of them, put them in a cage, shoot them all dead, blow them up, have them kill themselves on ketamine, whatever. And it would not make a difference to the fundamental operation of the society that we live in. That is where I
Who
disagree.
leads them? Who chooses the employees? Who chooses them? Who
You have figureheads in society who appear to be the people in command. They appear to be the people who run things. And capitalism likes to reproduce itself, and the way it reproduces itself is by getting all the population, or the population of the
So
world,
what's the option?
to bow down and believe that there is some great superior brain, just the same as the Christians and the Muslims
No, not
believe
the
there is a God or an Allah who commands what happens on earth, whereas actually they make Allah and they make God.
Yeah.
So it is that we impart to these people a belief that they have some grand superior knowledge. If Steve Jobs or Bill Gates or Elon Musk or any of these high-tech experts were really so brilliant, how come all of them come up with the same products all at once? How come the AI comes out of DeepSeek, of Quen, of Claude, of ChatGPT, of Palantir, all at once? All of these things suddenly appear. How comes that? Because they're all suddenly so brilliant. They all suddenly invent things out of their backside. They come because the technological level of society has been reached as a consequence of the development of the internet. Someone had to go at me last week. They said to me, "How can you say you use AI? Surely it's unethical." I just thought about what fool
that's
are
stupid,
you?
that's
You're
stupid.
talking. Every time you've been using the internet for the past 30 years, you've been using AI. Every time you go on your mobile phone, for the past 30 years, you've been using AI. That's why I disagree with your arguments about digital ID. You think there is no we've already got digital ID. The idea you don't have digital is nonsense. Every time you pick up your phone, in fact, not every time you pick up your phone.
We are talking about programmable currency as well.
What do you think this is? People go in the shop, they go bleep.
Programmable
People,
currency.
what do you
Yes,
mean
they're already
programmable?
walking into
We already have programmable
We've got
currency.
to stop that.
We already have it. Everywhere you go, you are tracked. Your mobile phone is a permanent tracking device. A permanent tracking device. Everything you do on your mobile phone is recorded. Everything you've done on the
what are you
internet
doing?
is
Giving up?
recorded. I am pointing out
reverse it.
these things already exist. There is nothing.
So what?
Because you're imagining that there's some point where there's a new thing comes in. Suddenly, Klaus Schwab's going to ship you all, and you're all going to become agents. You're already under that system. You're already under that system.
They do want to tip
There's
us.
nothing new about it. You are already under that system. And then the only way they get you to believe this is make up some fictional story that everyone in China is already under this system. Well, they are, in the sense that everyone in China has got a mobile phone. But otherwise, the Chinese people aren't under any more surveillance than you or I. They do not have any so-called social credit system in China. But all you have been told they do. You've been told the whole of China is run by social credit. Everyone's got a camera on them. Facial recognition everywhere you go. And that's coming here. That's what you've been told. But it's not true.
And I know.
But already here, we do have the core elements of that. We have in the same way as the Chinese have that. All those core elements have been on the mobile phone. As soon as the smartphone came about, we were already under a digital tyranny. And that's why these
currency in China.
I'm standing right here speaking. It's
Keep
difficult
cash.
to concentrate.
No, he's
Keep cash.
Yeah, but it's difficult to concentrate talking about that.
Cash.
Hello to you. You are perfect, and I follow you always. And you talk knowledge, which is a reality. Thank you very
Oh,
much.
he's
sir.
your
Have a good
brother.
day.
No.
No,
He's my paid.
I swear,
He's my
first
paid
time I met
marketing
him.
agent.
I swear, first time I met him, and first time I see him. But
He's your
I
lover.
follow him
Your
on
lover.
the. I follow him on the YouTube. Thank you very much.
You are lovers.
I employ him from TripAdvisor.
But they've got rid of currency in China. So they have to pay digitally.
They haven't got rid of currency in
Most
China.
places they have, haven't they?
Most places they have in Britain as well.
Well, it's true. It's getting worse.
Yes,
but
yes,
that
yes.
absolutely has to be exposed. That has to be
You
exposed.
say keep cash, and it's all very well. I'm quite happy with the idea of keep cash. But in reality, that's not going to make any difference.
Oh, of course
You
it
withdraw
will.
money out your
Of
machine.
course it will.
Because the banks aren't based on cash. The banks are based on digital data. You go into the bank, you withdraw cash. They've got cameras in the bank, right? You withdraw cash, it's all recorded digitally on a computer.
Look, they've
You think it's
already
not
been
recorded?
debanked
As
lots
soon
of
as you
people.
spend it in a shop, that's digitally recorded by
Yeah,
the
look,
shop.
they've already debanked lots of people. This is going to get worse in the future, especially as things get tougher and people
I'm not
stand
denying
up.
that, but
So
that's the
it's like,
nature.
if you got
That's
cash,
the
then
nature.
if you got cash,
Look,
you
there's
can
a
still
guy.
buy food.
There's a guy here who comes to Speaker's Corner regularly. You've also had this happen to you. This is nothing to do with keep cash. He went on a demonstration last 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, Eric went on a demonstration, was arrested by the police, and the judge says you're not allowed to go to Westminster. You've had the same regulation imposed on you. So therefore, this idea that these specific elements of technological control that the ruling classes or sections of the ruling classes are introducing as stealth mechanisms for control of the population, that they are somehow, I don't know, unique and special. They're not. They've been being introduced since the 1980s as a consequence of the technological development of society. They have become
Nonsense.
ubiquitous
Well, it's all a
mechanisms of
consequence of
control.
the Stone
What
Age.
is your
It's an agenda.
As soon as
an agenda.
What do you mean an
Consequence
agenda?
of
Of
man
course, it's an agenda.
Yes,
What about
what
it?
is your
Push,
proposition
push.
instead of Musk?
Pushed by what?
It's been put, there's no
Which
question.
is
Look,
absolute truth and utter banality.
Well, because if you thread it together, you say, well, this is all heading towards this. Then you come up with some grand theory as to everything having been driven in one direction for all of time.
is.
That's the idea. Well, I disagree.
This is.
Right?
this
I
is-
you're
disagree.
fine to
I
disagree.
don't. I
But
don't
you're wrong.
You made up
think.
that
I don't
theory.
think they're a
That's
grand
your,
puppet
Your
masters.
theory. You're making up that theory. We didn't say that.
Well, you are. You're saying they're grand puppet masters. For example, Klaus Schwab, who's got an agenda. He's put forward
Well,
at
he
the
does have an
UN,
agenda,
which I'm
which
not
they've
denying.
written about
Which
it,
I'm
yeah.
not denying.
written a
And
book.
then he's been implemented.
2 books.
Sorry.
He's written a book about
So
it.
have
2
lots of
books.
people.
Yeah. Well, it's clear, and all the heads of governments around the world went every year to Davos to worship at his feet.
Yeah, but
and
now
find out what to
now
think.
he's been removed, hasn't he?
Well,
Or
he's
you didn't
kind of
realise that?
he's kind of stepped down.
He's
hasn't
not
he?
been
He's
stepped
not-
down. He's been
he's-
accused of sexual impropriety.
Well, they're
and
all
removed.
fucking. Well,
It's
that's
not quite the same thing.
Okay. Well, I hadn't heard about that, but I knew he was stepping away.
Klaus
But
Because
anyway,
it is
hiding
never.
behind
And
the
my
curtain.
point is
that's
this.
again.
My
That's
point
the
is quite
head of the.
simple.
It's the head of the
Exactly.
state. So
My
it's the
point
same
is quite
thing.
simple.
Yes, it'll carry
It
on.
is not about an individual.
No,
Or
it's
a
not.
plan. Or
he
a
was
plan.
always a puppet.
But it's not about a plan. What sort of regime? If you wanted to establish a totalitarian dictatorship, what
They
sort
have
of
a written
regime?
out plan.
What sort of regime would have one plan? No alternative. No B plan, C plan, D plan,
of
E
course
plan,
they've got
F
a
plan.
fucking-
No
they've got
other
a
plans.
vast
Only
network
one
of
plan.
in it. Of
course
Only
they've
one.
got a vast
Even
network
the
of
Chinese Communist Party
They've got a
and the
network,
Soviet
yes.
Communist Party had multiple potential plans.
Yes,
They
yes.
had alternative people they could
course.
replace one person with.
course.
How do you think the Soviet
same
Union
here.
collapsed? If there was only one plan by Joseph Stalin,
Nobody's
introduced
saying
forever,
there's only one
or there's
plan.
one plan by Klaus Schwab
No one's
to be
saying
introduced.
that.
No, you're saying it.
No, we're not.
You are.
No, we're
No,
not.
I've said that.
You are saying
You're putting
Klaus
words
Schwab
in our
and the
mouth, as you
UN
always
have got a
do.
series of plans. One, mass immigration and eugenicism in order to
They want
control the
immigration
population.
to
Digital
reduce
currency
wages.
to
Reduce
control
wages.
the population like social
You
credit
said that
in
yourself.
China.
They
Right?
were having more immigration into Germany.
I'm not denying that, and I argued why. It's a capitalist motivation to extract surplus value from the unpaid
So
labour.
you
of
think
workers.
you're deluded if you
Classical
think that's the
Marxism.
if you think that's the motivation. for
It is the
It
motivation.
Absolutely,
That's what
it
I
isn't.
think.
Absolutely,
There you go.
well, you're
and
wrong.
you're saying
You're
that
wrong.
instead of that,
Yes.
it's a specific plan.
Yes.
Well, there you go.
Yes.
That's what I was arguing. No, you're welcome to argue
Well, I
your
would
point of
say it's
view,
both those
but I
things.
disagree with it. That's all. I don't have to agree
It's
with
way
it. do I?
beyond money.
Sorry?
Way beyond money.
Well, I don't think it is. I don't think it is. There are people who've got other agendas than money. For example, the Zionists want to establish their control over sections of the Middle East and large swathes of the world. That's not necessarily financial at any particular moment, although financial is also important.
It is
also
important. It is important.
And so, and there are all sorts of political groups in society and religious groups who want to promote their agendas. There are political groups that I support that want to promote their agendas.
Yes,
but they're all contending forces within society, which is divided by particular social groupings. How those social groupings clash with each other is the manifestation of politics. That's how history plays out. And it isn't guided by a single mind, much as you might like it to be that way. Well, you were arguing Klaus Schwab is behind it.
No, I never said
I'm saying
that.
he's not behind it.
It's indicative of the kind of the global
Joe Edwards is
conspiracy.
behind it all.
I'm sorry, but you have been arguing that for many years.
Well, there are certain policies. Well, there is a kind of globalist agenda.
I'm not denying that.
And that's like, it's difficult to pin down. It's like this is all the
In fact,
conspiracy theorists. People are called conspiracy theorists. It's very the researchers have done all sorts of things to look into where is the power really that's dictating
Yes, and
this.
it moves.
And it's very difficult to pinpoint. You've
Let me
got
put it to you
various
this way.
groups like
Let me
the
put it to you
Council
this
for
way.
Foreign
Let me
Relations,
put it to you this
the
way.
Royal.
Let me put it to you this way.
The black mobility.
When you say there are globalists, I'm not denying there is a faction of the international ruling class governed by the Western elite who have what you call a globalist agenda, which is a long-standing agenda. Nothing new about it. It's been in operation for hundreds of years, and that is the idea: open markets, global control by the biggest corporations and the most powerful states over the world. That's the way in which the globalization has operated under the name which we used to call imperialism.
That's kind of roughly, but I'd
Yes,
agree
it's
with
roughly,
that.
because it's not
It's very rough and
one
ready.
specific group. There are different groups amongst the imperialists. Germany on one agenda, France another agenda, Spain another agenda. Sometimes they make coalitions. At the moment, there is a split between the so-called globalists of America and the globalists of Europe. That has manifested itself as nationalism. In fact, there is a globalist nationalism at the moment. It's the dominant trend in the world today, is globalist nationalism. Now, the people standing here waving England flags and waving Union Jacks and waving the George Cross, they are victims and supporters of globalist nationalism. And the same dynamic that leads to Donald Trump. I mean, why do these things happen all at once? Donald Trump, Meloni, what's the name in France, in Hungary, Orban,
Macron, you mean?
not Macron, the other one,
Oh, Le Pen.
Le Pen. These forces are the same forces, the ADF in Germany, the same forces internationally
Form here.
advocating very similar ideas internationally.
Oh, right.
In other words, they are a globalist force, and they are not advocating, help the poor of the world. Instead of this, they're saying our national interest is superior to the global interest of the world, and our national interests require that we prepare for war against China. And that is the priority of this faction internationally, or better said, the leading group of this faction, which is Donald Trump and his allies in the United States. Having said that, on the issue of fighting against China, it's a bipartisan issue. The so-called international globalists, Hillary Clinton, Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, and the national globalists, in other words, Donald Trump and his allies, they have the same policy on that issue. Why do they want to fight against China? Because China has a different relationship of classes in society. The Chinese Communist Party presides over a society in which public ownership dominates the economy. That is the same conflict that existed between the Soviet Union and the United States of America in the Cold War. It's exactly the same conflict. That conflict has not gone away. And they would like to inflict a devastating blow against China, just as they did against the Soviet Union, restore capitalism, and then the globalist agenda will take over once again. They will be all in favour of occupying parts of China, of making it colonised, which is why they argue for Taiwan to be independent, because it is an ally of the United States of America. It's an American colony inside China, just like Hong Kong was a British colony inside China. No, it's not capitalist, no. It's dominated by public ownership of the means of producing wealth. When capitalists appear in China, just like they do in the Western world, basically they become completely controlled by the Communist Party. They tell them what to do, and if they don't do what they say, then they go to prison. So it's not, in that sense, it's not any normal capitalist country. The banks, the big industries, the infrastructure, the railways, transportation, airports, insurance, telecommunications, postal services, they're all publicly owned in China. All publicly owned. If they were all publicly owned in Britain, they'd be talking about Britain being communist. In fact, even when his brother advocated broadband for the population and the nationalisation of the railways, they said, and a national bank, they called that communist. So if China's economic structure existed in Britain, Britain would be called communist. Yes, yeah, that's true. That's true. But the infrastructure, the banking system. So if that enterprise here is private, at night time they put their money in the bank. In China, the banks are publicly owned. So if you've got a private manufacturing operation producing mobile phones, computers, whatever it be, all the money from that private operation goes into the public sector. All of it is transferred to the banks at night time or all day long in the operation of the corporation. So although there is a private sector in China, the private sector exists in China as a milking cow to transfer resources to the public sector. That is why the Western world wants to overthrow the Chinese state. That's why.
China's arrived.
Here we have a counter-revolutionary from China,
Taiwan,
who's all in support of the reaction. So, in any case, these are my point of view. That's why I disagree with some other people. And I'm entitled to do that. And that's what free speech is about. That's what free speech and speaker's corner is about. And to be fair, while I've been speaking at Speaker's Corner alongside peers many years, long before the COVID story began, we have often sharply disagreed. On Brexit, he was in favour of Brexit, I was opposed to Brexit.
Well, I was right.
On many issues. On many issues we have disagreed. That's what Speaker's Corner is about. You should be able to put your point of view.
I was right, remember.
You were right.
All right.
What do you think of Yanis
What do you think?
No, don't hear Alan.
I think Yanis Varoufakis,
Oh God, he's
the Greek former finance minister.
Oh right. Yeah,
he's
Something about him
God.
leads me to behave like you're behaving now.
yeah.
Yes.
I don't
Yes,
like
I
him.
used to
like
really
him.
like
I
him.
don't trust him.
Yanis Varoufakis.
He is putting forward the idea that capitalism, as I was describing it, in other words, commodity production for profit, has now been replaced by a digital feudal system. And he thinks that digital feudalism is now the dominant mode of production, way of organising production. I disagree. I think production, based on human labour, is still the dominant force. And if you look at, for example, the only way that would be replaced, in my opinion, is if they did produce, and you can buy a robot, a humanoid robot now, from Alibaba in China for about $6,000. So you can have a robot, these ones you see walking around, all the rest of it. The problem that the robots have got, and the same problem that the AI has got, is that firstly, tactile response is very poor. Humans are far superior at even the most simple tactile responses. So for example, if you put a cup on here and you want a robot to pick that cup up, it's extremely difficult to train a robot to do that.
They are training them better to do that.
They are getting them to do it better, but is it worth the enormous effort to do it? if I
It
use
is for them because they're
Well,
driven by an agenda.
because they
They
want
want to get
they
rid
want
of
to
the people.
sell you
I could do it
an
for less than
imaginary
any
story
robot.
that the robots will
Heiko,
take over
son
the
of a
running of the
robot.
world,
Hooray.
and that the
Heiko
workers
the robot.
will be replaced by robots. AI is the same thing. You go onto the AI. Now, many years ago, I taught someone. He writes a lot. He was a very competent writer, and but he wasn't very good at typing, and so I taught him to use voice to text. And once you reach, and it starts out very, well, it used to start out very well, and but after you reached about, I don't know, maybe you'd done 50,000 words, it started to go all wrong. Now, if any of you are using AI technology today, I use it quite a lot. I'm testing it out. I make apps and designs and plans and programs and stuff like that. So I'm testing it out as I can. I always cross-check the results of that AI results. And what you find is you're carrying out a simple task, let's say 30 times, a simple task, a programming task even. And when I ask it to do it another time, it completely fucks it up. Completely, for no reason whatsoever, it goes completely wrong. And this is what's happening with AI on a universal level. There are some elements of the AI which, if it makes a program and you extract that program from the AI, and then you make a separate program that runs on your computer, that will continue to function perfectly well. But as soon as you keep making demands on it, it goes wrong. And that's the basic law as to how AI is developing. There is no AGI coming. It's a delusion. And it's a marketing, artificial general intelligence. All the AI companies that have thrown trillions of dollars that we all need to save the planet, to help the poor, and so on and so forth. Trillions of dollars are being thrown into AI in pursuit of what they call artificial general intelligence. The idea is, first we learn to beat a person at chess. Then we learn to beat them at Go. Now we can beat them at everything. The machine can replace man itself. And therefore, you would not need human beings to produce surplus.
So you can
and if
just
you don't
destroy
need human beings to produce surplus, then you could annihilate those who are in the way, reduce the population, and live the life of the kings, surrounded by the supreme robots. So that idea is certainly in circulation amongst the ruling classes. But I do not think, my own opinion and my testing of the technologies and my knowledge of what's happening in the technologies, robots will not become a replacement for human beings. They will not become a replacement for human beings. They're trying because it's a marketing campaign.
No, because it's ideologically driven. It is ideologically driven.
Well, I tell you,
they're wasting the trillions on a dead duck. It's never going to work.
They're wasting the trillions on a dead duck because that's the way in which capitalism functions. When the profit rate is too low, they throw money into speculative capital. In Britain, classically, every 15 to 18 years, they would throw money into property. Not into building new property, but in buying and selling second-hand bricks. And the British population, particularly vulnerable to this idea because of the presence of the landlordist culture, has swung decade after decade behind the idea that property always rises in value. And in much of the Western world, this philosophy dominated the mind of the middle classes and thereby influenced the working classes as well. In recent years, they did the same thing with bitcoins and all the other digital currencies. Digital currencies, in and of themselves, are worth nothing at all. Zero. Not worth anything. But if people gamble on it, money represents the value of commodities produced in society. Money will adjust itself.
That's the same with digital currencies.
It's not the same with digital.
It is the same.
Because the digital currencies are objects of speculation. and therefore you cannot use them as objects of exchange. You can't go and buy
Nonsense.
in a shop whatever you want
You can,
with the digital
of course
currency.
you can.
You cannot.
Yes, you can.
You cannot.
You can change
You
into
trade.
the currency. Yeah, you
In
just
other words, you change
your
into the
Bitcoin
currency.
into the fiat currency, and then you buy
Into the currency.
Yes,
Because the currency
Yes.
is backed by the government, and the government
They
is
are
the
independent.
regulatory force determining that product, the pound note or the euro
Yeah, but it's
or
like,
the US
it's like
dollar,
saying
has
just because
value.
you own a
the
house,
Bitcoin
you've
does
got
not
no
have any value.
Yeah, but it's like saying because you own a house, it's got no value because you can't.
No,
buy
it's
something
like
you-
saying
yeah, you
the
can
value
get
of a
credit on
house, the
and you can
value of a
buy it and
house
buy stuff in the
is the
insurance
time
credit card.
taken to produce that house.
No, it's not.
In a particular area
No,
or
it's
wherever
not.
it
It's
be.
the value. It's
well
the
as the
price you
land.
could sell it for, or the price you could raise money
That's
for.
the price.
That's
That's not the value
Yeah,
of
that's
it.
the value. That's in terms of the financial value.
He's
In terms,
confusing prices.
in terms. Well, if you can't sell it and there's no value, then then all the work in the
means
world
value
that
when
went
it's
into
So
it
in other
means
words,
nothing.
this is what I'm saying to you about Bitcoin. Bitcoin's value, according to the marketplace, is determined by the price it sells for on the market at any time,
Yes.
with a baseline determination of the amount of electricity required to produce the Bitcoin. That's the theory. Of course, at a certain point, there'll be no more Bitcoin because all of them will have been produced. There's a limited 20 million coins, I think it is, that are ever going to be produced.
Yes.
That's what determines its ability to be a speculative product. But once those have been produced, then there'll be no more electricity involved. And therefore, what is the value of Bitcoin?
It goes
It's
up and up and up because
it's
it's
entirely speculative. It has no value in and of itself.
It's a gambling game.
No
No,
value
same
in and of
as
itself.
money. Same as
On
money.
the contrary, money is valued against the commodities produced in the society.
So it's
Well,
cryptocurrency.
That's
No,
what
it's not.
crypto.
It's not.
Certain countries have
Cryptocurrency.
legalised it.
There are a couple of countries where they've attempted to do that, and those countries have failed.
Can you buy a house with a Bitcoin?
Well, in
Yes, of
in
course you
this-
can.
In,
Not in
in
this
El
country.
Of course you
Salvador,
can.
you can.
I mean, not
But in all
use
those
it. Well,
countries
see,
that
if
have
you've
done
got
that,
Bitcoin,
they've
you
been
can
subject
you
to,
can just
well, where the market
go-
has gone up and they've got significant
Take a walk out, yeah?
holdings,
You go to
then they've
Tesco's
been able
and
to
you go
exploit
Bitcoin.
that. Because they're
Here's
weak
Bitcoin.
countries who don't have a strong
Here's my
currency of their
real
own.
no, but you
So they
just
rely on
transfer
someone
it
else.
into the currency.
Like Argentina in the
you've got to
past
transfer.
adopted the
Yeah,
US dollar
well, you can't-
because,
you can't
because their
buy-
own currency was so flat.
You can't buy stuff. You can't
Okay,
buy a
walk
cup of
into Tesco,
coffee
get
with
a
a
beer
pound
deal,
in
here's
France.
Bitcoin.
Well,
You have to get euros.
like
okay?
Ma once
It's the
said,
same as that.
In theory, in some countries you can. That's true. In some countries they did allow it. In some El Salvador,
Yeah.
I can't remember. There's one other country. I think Costa Rica, maybe some. Anyway, a couple of countries they did it as a desperate measure to try. Well, it hasn't succeeded.
Yeah, so it
but
failed,
when
so it's no good.
but if they've got a holding and the population and the price has gone up, as long as it's going up, they're doing okay. Just like people in London, if they own property and the price is going up, they can borrow more money out the bank and then they can spend more money. So
Yeah, but the
temporarily,
value of the pound is
temporarily,
going down and
it can
down,
look-
so that's why all the food
temporarily,
prices
it can
are going
appear
up.
that they're doing okay.
Well,
One
the
final.
value of
No,
the pound
no
against
more.
currencies
Okay, ladies.
is going down. The buying power.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. See you again next week.
Very good. Very good.
£1
Sorry, say that.